cover letters, and more. So we're just going to wait a couple more minutes, I think, to see if anybody else joins us. Okay, I think we might have everybody. Are you ready to get started? Awesome. So on this side, you can see today's presenters. My name is Taylor. I'm the team lead for the TeenWork team in Vancouver. Our two presenters today are Sasha and Ravina, who are both TeenWork job coaches. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have any questions, you can type them into the Q&A chat box, which is found at the bottom of your screen there. We'll have time to answer your questions at the end of the webinar, so feel free to ask questions at any time. Before we get started, TeenWork would like to acknowledge with respect that our Victoria office stands on the territory of the Lekwungen peoples, as well as honoring the Songhees, Esquimalt, Wasanich, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, whose relationships with the land continue to this day.
Hello. So like Taylor said, my name is Sasha, and I work at TeenWork in Victoria. If you watched the last webinar, you'll probably already have an idea about what TeenWork is, but for those who are tuning in for the first time, I'll explain our program a little bit. So TeenWork is a youth employment program created by Can Assist at the University of Victoria. TeenWork's goal is to help youth with disabilities and mental health challenges find and retain meaningful part-time work while attending high school. So TeenWork is currently a pretty unique program, as there are lots of employment programs for youth and lots for adults with disabilities, but very few for employment services for this specific demographic. So our previous webinar topic was discovering what job is right for you. They discussed looking at your interests through an employment lens, how to think of your life experiences as job-related skills, how to consider your strengths and challenges when applying for a job, tips for looking for a job that'll suit you, and a number of other factors related to getting a job, like motivation, location or transportation, environmental preferences, and availability. So a poll should pop up on your screen right about now. We'd like to know who attended the last webinar. If you missed the last webinar, it's available on our YouTube channel. So we'll wait a couple of seconds just to get the answers in. Hopefully I'll be able to see the answers. Okay, so about 50% said yes, that they did attend the last webinar, so that's great. And then 40 said no, and 10% said not sure. Great. Okay, so today we will be discussing what you need to get a job, including resumes, cover letters, and more. Our next webinar will be held in 2 weeks on August 5th, again at 1 p.m. And that one will be discussing what happens when and after you apply for a job. So we'll put a link in the chat box to the registration for that webinar at the end of today's webinar, all at once. Okay, so let's go on to today's schedule. First, we're going to talk about resumes, what they are, what they look like, what they're for, and how to make one. Then we're going to look at the same questions regarding cover letters. So after that, we're going to look at a part of applying that is just as important as resumes and cover letters, which is appearance and self-representation. This includes hygiene, clothing, and attitude. Finally, we'll go through the steps of applying for a job. So let's talk about resumes. First of all, what is a resume? So a resume is like a list of experiences that are related to the job that you're applying for. This shows the employer that you have the skills necessary for the job or that you're willing and able to learn those skills. So a resume also has contact information for people that can speak about your strengths and skills if an employer is looking for a second opinion. You should remember that a resume is one of the first items a potential employer will see about you, so it's important to keep it professional. So let's look at the sections of a resume. There is an example there on the slide. At the top of the resume, your name should stand out in a large font size. Ryan, if you click, the box will show up. There you go. Though there are many ways to organize this section, I often see the name centered at the top of the page with an email, home phone number, cell phone number, and home address listed on the line below. As emails are a primary form of contact in the professional world, it's important to have a professional email address. This is often some variation of your first and last names. The next section is the objective. An objective is a short sentence about who you are and what you're looking for or what you can bring to a job. For employers who have to look at hundreds of resumes for just one job posting, having a short and direct objective is a huge asset. For the youth I work with, their objective is usually something along the lines of, I'm a 17-year-old student at ABC High School looking for a part-time job to gain experience. An objective could also mention one skill or experience that's required for the job. For a person applying to a job that involves working at a cash register, the applicant may want to mention any experience that they have with cash handling, such as giving change at a bake sale. An example of using this in an objective could look like, I am a 17-year-old student at ABC High School with cash handling experience from bake sales at my school. The next section is the work experience. So many people who are applying for their first job will not have a lot of formal work experience and will have to be a little creative in discussing the experience that they do have. We'll talk more about how to do that later, but first let's talk about how to organize this section. In this section, as well as the education section, your most recent experience is listed first. Each job should be listed as the job position you had, then the company or person you're working for, if not a company, and then what city you worked in. Make sure to also include the dates of your employment at this place. Next, you can write short descriptive sentences in bullet point form or paragraph form to discuss the duties of your job. If using the bullet point form, include only the most important parts of your job and have no more than 5 points per job. So like work experience, the education section is organized by most recent first. For students in high school, also list what year you expect to graduate. Awards, high GPA, honor roll, or academic distinction can also be listed under this section, as well as certificates such as first aid or food safe. So the next section is skills. In the last webinar, we looked a little bit at how to get creative with your interests and skills. If you like video games, you can write on your resume that you are interested in creative outlets or you're able to communicate effectively with teammates to reach a desired goal. This section should be tailored to fit the specific job you are applying for by including the skills that are relevant to the job. If you're having trouble thinking of the skills necessary for the job, try checking out the job posting. Once you have an idea of what the employer is looking for, think about your interests and how they relate to those skills. The last section is the references. So due to the privacy issues of having a person's name and contact information available for anyone to see, the reference section has increasingly become a place for the sentence, references available upon request. While that is fine, many people encourage that this section be left off entirely to save space on your resume, as if an employer wants resumes, they know they can ask for them. For people with job coaches, like our TeenWork participants, we recommend leaving this section on and having your job coach's name and contact information here. So if an employer wants to contact your references, who is an appropriate person for them to talk to? A professional reference comes from someone you have worked with, or someone, or for people without work experience, from someone outside your family that knows you well. You can be creative here too. You can ask your camp counselor, church leader, or a family friend to be a reference for you if you don't have any work experience yet. So the next couple slides, we're going to look at how to be creative with your experiences and skills. This is especially important if you don't have a lot of formal work experience yet, as it fills out your resume and makes it look more professional. So here we have two examples of how to turn regular experiences that a lot of people have into job-related skills. It's kind of like we're translating them into more professional language. What we're really looking to describe on our resume is the professional skills that we have developed in any situation, such as commitment, independence, and experience. As an example, while cutting your neighbor's lawn, you have gained experience with tools. You have learned to work independently, and you've shown commitment to an unpaid responsibility. Again, on this slide, we have listed some experiences and their job-related skills. Though these three are often very helpful when having a job and could go on your resume just as they are, they can also be put into that responsible or professional language. So we're going to do another poll. We're interested to see if those listening in today already have their own resumes, whether you wrote it yourself or you got someone else to help you with it. So I'll give everyone a moment to answer that poll and then we can carry on. Okay, so 82% say yes, they do have a resume, 14 say no, and 5% say I'm sure. Okay, so if you already have a resume, you might ask the question, does it need to be updated? The short answer is yes. Resumes should be updated for each job you apply for so that only the information that is relevant to the job is included. If this is your first job, you may not have that much experience, and that's okay. Just make sure to update your skills and objective to be relevant for the job. So let's look at formatting. For people applying to their first few jobs, their resume should be about one single page. If your resume is longer than that, you might have some information on there that isn't necessary, or you might be using too big a font size. Font size on a resume should be 10, 11, or 12 point, and you should use one font throughout the main body. Bolding can be used on resumes, but only to emphasize the most important features. It should be used pretty sparingly. To make it easy on yourself, try using a pre-made resume template. This will help your resume stay neat and look great. Okay, so we're gonna play a little game of spot the difference. How is this version that's on the slide here, how is this version of Amy's resume different from the one we looked at before? Do you see anything that's wrong or that could be better? You can type your answers in the chat and then we'll talk about what you see. Okay. Yeah, so we've got two answers. One person says the title is too small, and yeah, definitely. Amy's name is at the top there, and it looks okay, but it's really small, and it's not standing out off the page. If I were looking at this resume, I would probably miss it unless I was really looking for it. So I wouldn't say it's super effective. And then another person says, bolding the wrong stuff, definitely. There's a lot of bolding all over the place, and it's a bit too much. Someone else says, lacking font size variety. So you should be using only one font size for the whole resume, but what you could mean here is the reference section at the bottom here. That's an entirely different font size. So it's a whole lot bigger than any of the other sections. So that would be one of the final things that we could change on this resume here. So if you click the slide again, we'll see Amy's, oh, there you go, Amy's first resume, or the more professional one. So the font size is all the same. You can see that the bolding is used in a little bit better way. And in the skills section, sorry, I have to look over here. The skills section, you have more job-related tasks. In the old one, you have video games and hockey, which technically, yes, are skills, but they're not really job-related. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so now that you have a resume or you know how to make one, how do you use it to get a job? Like we mentioned earlier, a resume is a necessary part of applying to a job. You can bring a resume with you to hand out at a job fair. You can bring one with you to hand out to a local store, or you can send one by email, fax, or through some websites to help you apply. We'll go into more detail about applying to jobs later today and in our next webinar, but first Ravina is going to talk a little bit more about cover letters.
Okay, so before we start, we're going to do a quick poll here. So who here has ever written a cover letter? It could be that you wrote it by yourself or with a job coach. And we'll just give you a couple of minutes to add to that. Okay, so it looks like the majority of you have written a cover letter. So 74% said yes, 17% said no, and 9% are unsure. So we will kind of go into a little bit more detail about cover letters. Next slide. So what is a cover letter? A cover letter is a more detailed overview of your resume and history. It goes into detail about your work experience, skills, education, and any other relevant information tailored to the specific job. It is essentially a summary of your resume. So who you are, how you are qualified, and why you are good for the given position. If you know that there are parts of a job that you will need accommodation for, a cover letter can also be used to talk about a disability or mental health challenge that you have. And accommodation can be something like requiring someone else to lift the heavier items at work, or it could be that you need a calculator when you are working on the cash register. We will talk a little bit more about accommodations in webinar 3. So some people wonder what the point of a cover letter is, as it sounds pretty similar to a resume. So let's go over some differences between the two. A resume is a list of your experiences and skills, while a cover letter provides context for the experience that is mentioned on your resume. Since cover letters give you more freedom to write and explain things, they are also used to explain how your previous experience is relative to the position that you are applying for. So again, a resume highlights your skills and experiences, and a cover letter explains how they relate to the job that you are applying for. A cover letter can increase your chances of getting an interview, and it helps determine if you are a suitable candidate for the job. So when do you need to submit a cover letter? A cover letter should be submitted at the same time as the resume, whether you are applying online or in person. I always tend to take my cover letter with me to job interviews or when I'm going into a store to apply. I think employers really appreciate the extra effort that it takes to explain how I would be a good fit. Okay, so now I will touch on the different sections of a cover letter. A cover letter is made up of the following 5 sections. So the header, acknowledgement, body, closing, and signature. You can see an example of a completed cover letter to the right here on your screen. And in the next slides, I will go into further detail on what these sections are. Okay, so your header should include your contact details. This includes your name, address, phone number, and an email address. Your full name should be the focal point of your cover letter with a big font and a bold text. It adds a nice touch if the header on your resume and cover letter match. The next line down will contain the rest of your information. Your address will include your street address, city, and postal code. It is also acceptable to leave out your street address and just list your city, whatever you prefer. As for your phone number, list your home or personal cell number. Ideally, list the number that you are most reachable at. And as for email address, like Sasha mentioned before, use a professional email address such as yourname@gmail.com. So here you see an example of what the header of your cover letter should look like. So we have Amy Samuelson's name, nice and big, followed by her address, along with a professional email and the phone number she is most reachable at. The next section is acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is a greeting where you address your cover letter to the hiring manager in charge of the position you're applying for. The hiring manager's name can usually be found on job postings and sometimes on the employer's website, depending on where you're applying to. If you're unable to find the hiring manager's name, you can opt to use a more generic greeting, such as "Dear Hiring Manager." Before the greeting, also make sure to write the date that you are submitting the cover letter. Unless you are writing the cover letter and submitting it all on the same day, you might have to write a date a few days in the future. Whenever you're planning to submit your application, drop it off in person. Okay, so this leads us to body paragraphs of your cover letter. There should be approximately 2 body paragraphs in a cover letter, but they can be quite short. The first paragraph of your cover letter should grab the manager's attention, provide a self-introduction, list what position you are applying for, describe where you found the job posting, and offer a sneak peek into why you are the ideal candidate for the role. The next paragraph will talk more about why you're the ideal candidate, so not writing too much in this paragraph would be ideal. So yeah, as you can see on this example, there is room to write the name of the company that you are applying for, the position that you are applying for. So in this case, it is for a retail associate position and where you found the posting. And here it seems like they found it on Indeed. This paragraph also touches on some of their skills, such as being helpful and organized. And this is a way of offering a sneak peek into why they would be a great candidate for the position. So the next paragraph should discuss your skills and experiences and accomplishments in a way that suits the company's needs and goals. For an example, if you are applying for a retail position, mentioning skills such as customer service, cashier experience, and stocking skills will strengthen your application, as you are mentioning skills that are relevant to retail services. Another great tip is to research the company that you are applying for, as this will help you tailor your cover letter by giving you some insight on what the company is looking for in a potential candidate. So in this example, Amy's cover letter explains the skills that she has that are relative to a retail position. So she writes, working at Walmart and Tim Hortons allowed me to gain skills such as patience, reliability, consistency, and social skills, which can be applied to the job site. I believe I would be able to pick up the duties required of the job in a timely manner. Another skill that I have is that I am a great team player. I am able to work well with others and would make a terrific addition to blank, and then the name of the company that she is applying to will go there. So this brings us to the closing paragraph. Here you should thank the manager for their time and consideration of your application. Finish with a prompt that allows the manager to invite you in for an interview. So as you can see here, Amy has mentioned that they would love to come in to discuss their application and thank them for their time. This is an excellent example of how to close a cover letter. The final section of your cover letter is your signature. At the end of your cover letter, be sure to use a professional yet friendly letter closer, such as kind regards, best regards, sincerely, or warm regards. Remember to always sign your cover letter with your first and last name. We will see an example of this on the next slide. Yeah, so here is the cover letter in full. It has the header, acknowledgement, the 2 body paragraphs, closing statement, and a signature with her first and last name. So you can see how it's all come together here. Okay, so now we will discuss the importance of appearance and self-representation when it comes to employment. First off, let's talk about hygiene. So hygiene is a practice of maintaining your health through cleanliness. Keeping yourself clean is more socially acceptable as it helps other people see that you care about yourself and others. So now that we know what hygiene is, how can we put this into practice? So good hygiene includes brushing your teeth and taking a shower every day, washing your hair and your body, combing or styling your hair so it appears neat, wearing deodorant, trimming your nails, and wearing clean clothes. It is also good practice to wash your hands often and sneeze or cough into your elbow, as it helps keep other people healthy. It is important to know that if you are going to apply to a job in person, that you appear professional. This includes making sure you have covered all the steps of basic hygiene as mentioned above, as well as what you wear, which we will cover in a moment. So right now, wearing a mask in public is a basic part of hygiene as it keeps yourself and others safe. So along with practicing good hygiene, it's also important to dress appropriately. Professional clothing can vary depending on what job you are applying for. No matter what you wear, your clothes need to be clean. So looking clean and smelling clean and to be unwrinkled. If you are wearing a button-up shirt, it may need to be ironed. So I remember when I was dropping off a resume and cover letter once a while ago at a retail store. I actually wore a tank top and shorts. The manager was in and interviewed me on the spot, and luckily I did get hired. However, it's good to keep in mind that when you are going to drop off an application, prepare for the possibility of being asked to talk to the manager right away and to wear something nicer. So consider wearing something other than the clothes that you would wear to school to give off a good impression. So like most things in life, attitude is key. We discussed having good hygiene and dressing professionally, both essential aspects in the employment industry. To top it off, being confident and motivated when speaking to employers will help you stand out. Remember to also be respectful and use your manners during interactions. Though right now we aren't shaking hands with people because of COVID-19, a handshake is usually the professional way to greet an employer. Other ways of being professional, confident, and polite include greeting people with a smile, using a friendly tone of voice, and saying please and thank you. If any of these are things that you have trouble with, you can always ask your friends, family, and your job coach to help you practice.
Okay, so we're almost done. There's about 10 slides left, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions if you have any. So right now we're going to look at steps to applying for a job. We'll go into a lot more detail about applying in our next webinar, but here's a simple breakdown. So as you can see from this graphic here, these are the steps that you'll need to go through in order to get a job. So we covered the first bit in webinar 1, which is available on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Today we're covering the next little bit, and in 2 weeks we'll talk about the rest. So like we talked about in the first webinar, it's easy to think that these steps will all go in order, like the arrow on this slide. But in reality, you might have to bounce around the steps a few times before you begin your first job. So the first step to applying for a job, before you even start looking at what jobs are available, is to reflect on what kind of jobs might be right for you. You should think about your skills, your strengths, interests, and look what jobs are available in your area or are easy for you to do. And then think about what accommodation you might need for jobs. For more information on this topic, you can check out our first webinar. So the next step to applying for a job is to make a basic resume and cover letter. So we said earlier that each resume should be specific to each job that you apply to, but before you get there, it can be helpful to have a basic resume with all of your experience so that you don't forget any of it. The same thing can be helpful with a cover letter. Though cover letters are even more specific to the job, having a good idea of what to write in a cover letter before you try to write a specific one is a good idea. So once you've found a job that you want to apply to by looking on Indeed or spotting a hiring sign, it's time to take another look at your basic resume and change it to fit the job that you're applying for. We don't mean you should fake any experiences that you don't have, but if you are applying to a cashier job, make sure to talk about any experiences you have working with money. The next step is to apply to that job. Nowadays, people often apply to jobs online through job search websites or through the company website, but it is still a common practice to drop off a resume at a store in person or to visit a job fair and hand out resumes. So like Emma talked about in our last webinar, a lot of job opportunities can be found through talking to our friends and family. I got my first job actually after going to a job fair at Butcher Gardens, where my brother worked in the coffee shop. I talked to a few of the managers from the different sections, and I went to the coffee shop with my brother. Because my brother worked there, he was able to put in a good word for me, and I got hired. At the end of 5 years of working there, it was my brother and me and our 2 cousins all working the same coffee shop, all because we recommended each other. So try talking to the people in your life to see if they have any good recommendations for you where you should work, or if they can put in a good word for you. All right, So next, after about a week after you have applied, whether in person or online, you should refresh the job's memory of you by giving the employer a phone call or sending them an email. This shows that you're excited about the position and can increase your chances of getting an interview. If you haven't heard back from the employer in about 2 weeks since you've applied or did your phone follow-up call, it's probably a good idea to move on and look for another job. Some employers won't contact you if they aren't interested in hiring you. So if you manage to get an interview, congratulations. To prepare, you should go over some common interview questions. And then when going to the interview, remember to bring a copy of your resume and cover letter in a folder to keep it unwrinkled. Dress professionally and focus on good manners and a positive attitude. But what happens if an employer asks you to come in for an interview at a time that doesn't work for you, or you've changed your mind and you don't want that job anymore? A simple professional email or phone call response asking to reschedule or politely decline the offer will work in this situation. We'll go over this a bit more in a bit more detail in our next webinar on August 5th at 1 p.m. So after the interview, there are only two outcomes. You'll either get the job or you won't. If you don't get the job, it's okay to feel disappointed, but remember that there will be other jobs out there that might suit you better. In either situation, it's a good idea to send an email to the interviewer thanking them for the opportunity, as this will leave a good impression. If you did manage to get hired, well done. It's time to start your new job. Our next webinar will go over some more information about what to do once you've been hired. If you didn't get hired at the place you applied to, it's time to start again from step one. And remember, no matter what step you got to in the application process, it's a good learning experience, whether you got the job or not.
Okay, so that wraps up our webinar on what you need to get a job. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a little recap of today. So today we covered what a resume is and how to make one. We also looked at the different sections of a cover letter and how to make a tailored and functional cover letter depending on what job you are applying for. We also discussed good hygiene and how to present oneself when applying. Lastly, we mentioned steps on how to apply for jobs. In 2 weeks, we will have webinar 3, which will go into more detail about job applications, interviews, accepting positions, and what to do when you are rejecting or being rejected from a job. And we do hope to see you there. Yeah, so if there are any questions, please do type them into the chat or Q&A box now, or send us an email at teamwork@canassist@uvic.ca. So we'll just give everyone a few moments here if there's any questions.
Okay, so it looks like there's one question. I guess I'll answer that one. It says, can I wear running shoes to an interview? I think it depends on where you're applying to. In general, I would say no. If they're dad running shoes or bright colors. If they're just plain black, you might be able to get away with it, but try to wear shoes that maybe are a little bit fancier. Hopefully that answers that one. I think there was another question in the chat. And yeah, so the video will be online. It will be posted on YouTube. And I believe our YouTube channel is CanAssist. Yeah, CanAssist, TeenWork at CanAssist. We'll put a link in the chat pretty soon, hopefully. And then Ravina is going to answer the next question.
Yeah, so we have a question here. What if the workers are being rude during the interview? So typically during an interview, you won't be around other workers. You and the employer, the manager will go to a private room, maybe at the back of the store, maybe somewhere else. If you're working in a mall, I've seen employers do interviews like at a coffee shop. So you're gonna be alone with the employer, or you can even bring your job coach. Sometimes job coaches are allowed to go to interviews with you if requested. So yeah, you don't have to really worry about workers being rude to you during the interview. And again, if you are more interested in the interview process, do come to our webinar in 2 weeks for webinar 3.
All right, that might be all of the questions. Oh, okay. There's another question there. What this person meant was, what if the interviewer is being rude? That is a good question. That's that can be hard to deal with, for sure. In this situation, I think, you know, try and be as polite and professional as you can be. You know, you can always do better if someone's being rude to you, you can always be polite to them. It might be frustrating, but do your best. And then you can tell the interviewer at the end, you know, if they're saying that they would like to hire you, you can say at the end, well, I'm sorry, but I've decided that this is maybe not the right job for me. So in our next webinar, we'll go over a bit more detail of how to reject a job offer. So that'll be covered a little bit in there. Ryan, can you throw the link into the chat if you have a second? And another question here we have is, what is a job fair? So a job fair is, well, you wouldn't see it in COVID times, but it's like a bunch of employers all getting together in one place. Sometimes it happens at schools or big halls, and a bunch of employers line up around the room and they talk about what kind of positions that they have available. And then potential employees go around and look at the jobs and apply to the places that they're interested in. So it's a really good place to check out, you know, most of the time job fairs are some specific kind of industry. So like I went to a job fair at Butchart Gardens, so it had different types of jobs in the Butchart Gardens because there's a whole bunch of places. But you could go to a job fair that's focused on food services or jobs that are available at a school, things like that. So a job fair is like a big room full of employers in all kinds of different sections that someone can walk around and figure out more about the different employers there. Okay, I think registration for webinar 3 isn't up yet. We will also be emailing out, oh yeah, the registration for webinar 3 isn't up yet. So we will be emailing out the link in, I think on Monday we said. So if you haven't been getting the emails for the reminders for this webinar and the one before that, you can type your email into the chat here. Make sure that you're just sending the chat to all the panelists so that not everyone has your email. And then we will add you to that list. That's okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you in our next webinar on August 5th at 1 p.m.